So, are y'all ready for Mr. Walter Koenig? All right, Mr. Walter Koenig of Star Trek, everybody.
Everything, my pants button? Yeah, okay. So, very sorry. I apologize sincerely for being late. There are times when such things are just unavoidable. Anyway, I'm here now. I'm glad we have a clown in the first row. I don't know why, but I think that's it's a good thing. So, the way I've always operated, and because I'm lazy, I generally just throw it open to questions, and anybody have any questions that they feel I might have an answer to, you might step up here, and we start forming a line if you want, and we'll field them as they come. Yes, sir.
I was wondering, because in the era when Star Trek came out, the Cold War was at its peak. I was wondering if you ever took any flack from people back home for playing a Russian, from more like nationalistic people back in the States.
No. First of all, my fans were kids, little kids, you know, who thought I was groovy. And they wrote on line paper and pencil, and they loved my hair. Little they know. No, I once got a letter from a potato farmer in Oma and Idaho. That figures, potato farmers, Idaho, who wondered out loud why they would have a Russian during the period of the Cold War. But that was the only time it ever happened. Otherwise, as I say, it was not a very controversial character. You know, he was sort of comic relief if he was anything. Somebody else, the question?
Was that your original hair, and did you ever consider being a monkey? The monkeys?
What you saw, no. No. I wore a wig for the first 6 shows, for the first 6 episodes. A woman's wig. In fact, we went up to Max Factor, and we came back with a blonde wig and a red wig and a brunette, and I tried them all on, and then the executives tried them all on, and I figured, well, okay, now I've got something on you. If I ever need to bring it to bear, because they were having a lot of fun with the wigs. I had no idea what kind of an operation I was getting into. But when my hair grew out sufficiently, we stopped wearing the wig. And then I started backcombing it from here to there. And spraying it, a lot of spray. I was using so much spray that when the wind came, my hair would fly up in a piece, you know, like that. And I had to hold it down. I have to walk around all day with my hand on my head, holding the hair down. And then finally, when we started making the movies, I went straight to a hairpiece. At that point, I said, enough of this. And so the next 20 years, I wore a hairpiece. And then somebody recently wanted to know if they could buy it from me. I was tempted, but I didn't do it. Yes?
All right, enough about Star Trek. Let's talk about Babylon 5 for a minute. Anyway, so when you're doing Bester as an actor, did you approach him as a hero or a villain? Because he was a very complex character, and he could very easily be seen as one or the other or both. So as an actor, how did you approach it?
As an actor, I didn't make that judgment. I didn't make the judgment whether he was a hero or a villain. You have to play the character with conviction. You have to believe what the character believes. And you can't editorialize what the character feels. You need to be able to say, well, I'm doing the right thing for this character under these circumstances, in order for you to believe it and in order for the audience to believe it. And I think that's the way most actors go about it. They don't label the character as a hero or that's not just a matter of words. It's really an approach, an acting approach that you have to take. You have to be able to justify who that person is, and I could justify it. I could justify if he was very loyal to his own people, and he had to take care of them, and any of the bad stuff that happened as a consequence of the stuff that he felt it was his duty to do. Now, having said that, bear in mind that for the duration of the role, for as long as I was running the lines, for as long as I was on the sound stage with the lights bearing down, that was my world, and that was my belief. But given free volition to do those things in real life, I wouldn't do them. But that real life is apart from my acting life. I hope that doesn't sound like I'm talking in circles, but you have to kind of believe. You have to believe that what you are doing is the right thing at the time you're doing it.
Well, I'm definitely sure Bester did.
Yeah, thank you.
Hello. I was wondering, because Renegades is coming out soon, how did you like reprising the role of Chekov as Admiral Chekov, and what did you bring to the character this time that is going to show his progress and development as a character compared to when...
I brought out another 122 years. Chekov is now 143. I believe it. It was fun. It was okay. I was a little ill at the time. I wasn't at the top of my game, but it was kind of enjoyable to do it. It's coming out momentarily. It really is very close. I spoke to Sky Conway, the man who's behind the whole thing, and he said that it should be within a month. Within a month, they should have the last of the post-production shots to do. There's an enormous number of, special effects and CGIs, and like 500 or 600, which is a lot for a low-budget film. But they're just about done with it, and I haven't seen it. But the people who have seem very encouraged.
Another question, if that's okay. You've been in other fan films before, such as Of Gods and Men, and I know that Vic Mignogna, who is in Star Trek Continues, is in Renegades. What is the difference between, how does Renegades differentiate from Of Gods and Men and Continues?
Well, the Chekov I played in Of Gods and Men was entirely different. And that's the reason why I did it. Because even though he presents himself as being the same person at the beginning, then we go into a whole other parallel something or other. I don't know, it's one of those things. And the character changes. I mean, he becomes very much a revolutionary, a very passionate, very angry, very vengeful character who's lost his wife and child and is determined to get even, which was good fun to do. I mean, it's a different guy. So I had a good time doing that. Renegades, Star Trek Renegades, I'm just 143. That's all. You know, I haven't changed too much. You know, no hair, of course, and just talking with the same mispronounced accent. And having a moment or two here or there that I thought was fun. It's definitely a space opera kind of episode. And all I can tell you is what the people who've seen it say. And of course, that may be reliable or not, because people they fall in love with the work they're involved in, and they can't see the forest or the trees and all of that stuff. So it may be really good, then it may not. I don't know. I hope it is. I hope it is for all their sakes. I hope it is.
Thank you, sir.
I'm going to be the only one to ask this. Can you talk a little bit about Moontrap?
Yeah. Moontrap.
There's me and this dude right here. Bruce Campbell and Severed Heads, yeah.
Moontrap was another fun project. It really was. It was very much a family feeling. We shot it in near Detroit in the dead of winter. I remember using my script to scrape the windshield so that I could see outside of it, which offended the director, writer. But I wouldn't have gotten to work if I wasn't able to do that. Everybody got along very well. Everybody was really like a family. All the tech guys, all the people behind the camera, everybody chipped in. Everybody pitched in, and they all helped each other out. Now, when you do this, it was a union film, which I was very pleased about. I'm a great proponent of the union. But the union prohibits certain kinds of jobs. The costumer is not supposed to help lift heavy, equipment or do something that isn't within her purview or his purview. But everybody did that. Everybody helped each other out, And from that point of view, although it was not strictly according to code, it just brought this wonderful feeling together, a wonderful feeling among everybody working. And Bruce was great. I had not met Bruce yet. He had not achieved his the recognition that he has, obviously, in the last 20, 25 years, as evidenced by the fact that when it was first being released, it was starring Walter Koenig and Bruce Campbell, and now it's starring Bruce Campbell and Walter Koenig. I notice. But he was fun to work with, and we had a good time. It was a neat experience.
Thank you.
Did you do any experimenting and playing around with the Russian accents before you finally settled on the now iconic one that Chekov has?
Are you trying to tell me that it doesn't sound like a real Russian accent?
It's better than I can do.
Thank you. Would you like to come sit here with me? I got it from a book of dialects, and I got it from my father, who was Russian and spoke with a Russian accent. And at the time, nobody questioned it. It was only with the introduction of the internet and some blogger getting on and saying that I overacted the dialect that it became a catchword or catchphrase, and people started repeating it. I've talked to Russian people, whether you believe me or not. I've talked to people who thought it was authentic. The fact that I inverted the V's and the W's, my father did that when he spoke. Please pass the vegetables, is the way he used to talk. And he wasn't trying to sound like Elmer Fudd. It was really... So I take some umbrage to the people who with such extraordinary pronounced authority tell me that I'm doing it wrong. It's probably wrong. In fact, I know it's wrong in some degree, but not as bad as people have said. So I know that when we did Star Trek I, and I started, and Robert Wise was there, and I started, inverting the V's and the W's, he looked at me and went, and that was the end of it. I didn't do it again. You go back and watch Star Trek I, you'll see that there's none of that going on. But there was some humor to be had from doing that. And Leonard, who was pretty austere and dry, encouraged it in the nuclear Wessel scene. So we might have taken a little theatrical license, but it wasn't all that much, I don't think.
Good afternoon, Mr. Koenig, and thank you for appearing here today. My question isn't so much about your role as Chekov or your time on the show, but more in how Star Trek itself has impacted society today, in the fact that things that would have been science fiction then, such as data pads, communication devices, we all have a communicator now in our pockets for the most part. In the 50 years now that since you had the role, how much have, sorry, I'm a little nervous.
Just say it, man.
Yeah, no kidding. Since the progress of technology, how much of that has, God, I'm an idiot. Sorry.
How close have I achieved orgasm as a consequence?
No.
Doesn't do a thing to me like that, you know. In fact, I have a cell phone, and I know 3 functions on it, you know, turning it on and turning it off, and one other which sometimes I forget.
But I mean, the leap of technology since Star Trek, and inspired by people that were my age watching the show as little kids back in the 70s, did you foresee any of that actually happening?
No, but then I didn't think about it. You know, that stuff isn't important to me. That stuff is inevitable. I mean, the reason why it came about in the beginning is because technicians who eventually would have been working in that area, if they had not been working on Star Trek, came up with it for Star Trek. But it had to evolve. It had to evolve. We would have to be where we are today in terms of all the technology, communications, media technology, had Star Trek not existed. It's nice to think that it was born of Star Trek. It might have been inspired to some degree by Star Trek, but something else would have inspired it. We're not going to be left behind, you know. My sense is the whole purpose of life is an evolutionary purpose where we develop and we keep creating things. We may take 1,000,000 steps back, but we take 1,000,001 forward. And that's the way we grow as a society, as a culture, as a world. And we are, you know, it was little more than 100 years ago before we weren't flying. And look where we've come. And Star Trek, and we didn't have Star Trek back in 1890 when Wilbur and Orville were around. So I think it's neat. I think it's a great coincidence that the two things have evolved, and that one seems to have evolved from the other. But as I say, it would have evolved anyway. That's my sense. No, my thing about Star Trek, and it's the thing that I've grown to believe more and more, and it's the one thing I can take away from this life and feel good about, because, you know, I'm getting up there. You know, I see what happened with Leonard, and before him, Jimmy and DeForest, and I'm getting into that thin ice area. What I want to feel is that, in what way have I contributed, even minusculely, to making this a better world. And what I have determined, first of all, I think we're all here to exhaust our potential. We don't all do it, We don't all give everything that we have to give. But I think that's our purpose. Our purpose is to improve the world. And the world needs improving. You know, we have so much war, and we have so much death. And so whatever we leave behind that makes it a better world is the step forward, as opposed to making it a worse world. And there are people who are here on this planet and will be here who will be contributing to making this a better place. And I think it's all, now this sounds a little nutty. I'm not a proselytizer. I don't go around telling people what they should believe or what they can look forward to. But I do believe that we're going to have to, at some point, leave this planet. And we have to be able to reach out into space and find other homes, just for the human race to survive. It's a matter of survival. And I think that the good things we do are being pushed in that direction. You know, the whole thing about human endeavor and the need for human survival, and to making us better than we are. And I think that's what we contribute to. And this is such a circumlocucious manner of saying this. I'm wondering how many of you have fallen asleep since I've started. But Star Trek, people come up to me and say, my father got me involved in watching Star Trek. My mother, my older brother. And that, I take some as little credit as I can, I take some there, that I'm part of something that brings people together, that brings families closer. And I've heard it so many times, that it's not just, you know, some lyric statement that makes us feel, you know, better. It's a truth. It's a truth. Star Trek has brought people together, brought families together, made bonding more possible. Not for everybody, but enough people that I feel that, yeah, well, people didn't become a doctor because I'm a doctor. Dr. McCoy was a doctor, and people were telling him that all the time, or an engineer the way Scotty was, and they didn't become Russian spies because of me.
No, they just might have learned to fly because you were a navigator.
Thank you. I knew there was something. No, but I think it's that I was just part of a family that helped people congregate and assimilate some of the values that we had to promote, and just tighten the family bond. And that's why I'm proud of being associated with Star Trek.
Thank you, sir.
Hi.
So this new Star Trek movie franchise, making it an alternate universe, reprising all these wonderful roles, especially Chekov. Did the young actor who plays Chekov ever had approached you how he should tackle this role? And if you did, what type of advice did you give him?
Anton Yeltsin's a very talented actor. He's a very bright young man. He truly is. He's schooled in many areas. He was born in Russia, and he came here when he was like 1 year old. The coincidence is that his father, of course Russian, as was mine, his father was a professional ice skater, and as was mine. So there's that. We talked for about 3 hours, And I think if I hit home at all, and I don't think I needed to, he was just too sharp a guy that he needed any instruction from me. But I said, be yourself and do it your way. This is before I ever saw any footage. I said, there's 1,000 ways to interpret a character, and each one is as valid as the other. You bring, the more of yourself you bring to the role you play, the more truthful it's going to be, and the more people are going to believe it. And that's what you want. You don't want people to just say, oh, there's a guy who's pretending well. You want them to say, oh, there's guys who's living this. He's living through this. This is, he's embraced the character, and it's him. And I thought that Anton did that very well. I think the most extraordinary thing about Leonard was that Leonard totally did that. He totally engulfed himself. He totally became Mr. Spock, to the point where, as I was recently quoted as saying, I knew Mr. Spock before I knew Leonard. He had enormous integrity in his professionalism, and he played that guy all the time. He played that guy all the time, and it was being him. It was being him. It was sort of what we used to call method acting, because he just totally embraced the character. I don't know where I was heading with that. What was I talking about? What was your question?
It was about the actor who plays the new Chekov, and what advice you had given him if he ever had approached you. I didn't know if he did. Yeah. So I'm very proud of him. I mean, I don't know him, but I'm very proud of him. I think he's done a great job. I went to the first movie, thinking, oh, I'm going to hate this. I said, there's just enough pettiness in me and envy and all those things that watching a 19-year-old actor playing the character I played 45 years ago. And the curious thing was, much to my own pat on the back, I got just thoroughly involved in the movie and in the characters. I wasn't judging myself against him. How ridiculous! I'm a man I was 50 years older than he is, 55 years older. How do you judge yourself against somebody like that? And he did a great job. And in fact, they did pay homage to us. He did do a thing with the V's and the W's, which I thought was cute. I didn't think it was necessary, but I thought it was cute. And so I was tickled. I then went back and watched one of our films. I watched Star Trek IV. And I'd always thought that Star Trek IV was a really good movie. And it was a good movie. And Star Trek II, I watched Star Trek II. Oh, in fact, it was Star Trek II that I watched. And I saw, the pace was much slower. We went at a much slower pace, and which was applicable for the time. And this is we're talking almost 5 decades ago. Things change, styles change. You look at a 1930s movie, and it's different than today. Mm-hmm. You can still enjoy it for what it was and for what it was and how it was played out, but it's entirely different. But I did think that our best movies, 2, 4, which one? Maybe 6. There was a lot of humanity to our pictures, and you made it easy for you to identify with the characters, the good guys and the bad guys, and everything in between. There was more soul. These 2 pictures by J.J. Abrams are very entertaining, great fun. I am not askance at the lack of canon. It does not bother me. I know it bothers other people. But I do think it doesn't quite have that same spirit that we had, which is a reflection of the times. This is what we're doing now. We're doing these shoot 'em up, explode 'em,
Boy, do I sound like a 78-year-old man, or don't I? In my day, my God. But anyway, so this is the place for them. There's a place for everything, everything in its place, and these films are for now.
Mm-hmm.
And these for now. And 20 years from now, when they'll be making other Star Trek movies, and they'll have a different attack on the material, you'll wonder what it was that you thought you were so enamored with the films that are being shot in the 21st century, in the early 21st century. So I liked the movies. I liked Anton, neat guy. It's nice to know that somebody that you're rooting for, you know, like in a film or even I try not to know anything about the baseball players or the football players that I root for. So I just don't want to know what gorks they are, you know. I don't want to know that they're brutish or anything like that. I just want to think of them as heroes. But it's nice to know that the people that you do root for are good people. And I can say that pretty much about certainly about our folks and the Next Generation and the other Star Trek series. And as I grow to know the Abrams actors, I feel the same way.
All right. Thank you so much.
Okay. Oh, I do have one story about Anton that I should tell in passing. When the premiere was over, everybody had congregated in this huge parking lot for a party, an outdoor party. I saw it, hundreds and hundreds of people and journalists flashing, everything going on. And Anton was surrounded by a group of people, and I was just walking on the periphery. And he saw me, and he yelled out, "Walter, Walter, I got my own action figure." So he's a regular guy. He's got his own action figure. Yes?
Oh, it's so great to be here. I guess my question is, in your view, what, if any, was the larger social commentary being made throughout the arc of Babylon 5? And then also, a little bit separately, if you could say just a few words about your work with the folks in Burma.
I'd rather deal with it. I think we're running out of time. I'd rather deal with the second thing than the first. Okay. I was asked about 6 years ago. I was asked to take a trip to Burma by an American group called Campaign for Burma, and it was to make the world a little bit more aware of the atrocities that were taking place in that country. It was a military dictatorship, a brutal military dictatorship. They had elected a woman president, a wonderful woman, and as soon as they found out that she would actually run and that she would win, they put her on their house arrest. And she was on their house arrest for several years, many years. And the same time, they were conscripting 12-year-old boys to be soldiers. They were encouraging their soldiers not only to pillage, but to rape and plunder every little village in the country. It was ghastly, and this was just before the Chinese Olympics. And what they were hoping was to put some pressure on China as one of the five countries in the UN that had a kind of a policing action, along with Russia and the United States and Great Britain, and it might have been France, I think. In any case, so that to show a better face to the Olympics, they would try to pressure Burma into changing the way they dealt with their own people. I mean, I went to Burma. I was in a city that was a border city with Burma, and there was an infirmary there, a hospital. And I visited the patients, and they all had their arms and legs shot off, blown off, because the Burmese government planted bombs everywhere in Burma to discourage people from running away, from trying to find a better life. And they were carving out of plaster their artificial limbs. It was really ghastly, and I met a whole bunch of little Burmese kids. We took a surreptitious boat ride across the river. There is an official entrance into Burma with the customs and all that, but we went a back doorway and ended up in a little not even a town. It was a bunch of houses on sticks in the mud, with chicken running around and no amenities to talk of. And this is where people were fleeing to. They were setting up these little settlements and living there. And what they wanted me to do, because obviously these Burmese people had no idea who I was. They didn't know me with the W or without the W and the accent. But in Europe, there were still people who knew Star Trek. It was still something that was considered extant. And they set up a news conference, international news conference. And we had journalists from all over Europe, Eastern Europe, Central Europe, I think some from South America as well, to attend this news conference. And they came out of curiosity, what is a Star Trek guy doing here? That's what brought them in. And when I talked about what I'd seen, and it didn't have much play here, which ironically, but people sent me newspapers and reports from television shows in Europe about making everyone more aware of these terrible things. The Chinese really never came around. They never really gave much help. And they didn't seem to care whether it gave the Olympics a bad mark or not. And we wanted them to prevent or not to use Burma as an overland to the sea and keep them economically depressed and not to mine jewelry, precious metals that Burma had, not to buy them from Burma. These kind of passive ways of trying to get home the point that the Burmese were being really atrocious in their behavior. So that to me was kind of inspirational. That I felt that I had done something worthwhile. Very small level, obviously, but there is one. I'll tell you one very quick story, and then we'll quit. My son was also asked to go by another group, and he was asked to photograph it. So he had a camera all the time, and we got on the plane. I think it was a United plane to Europe. I mean to Southeast Asia, and they didn't have enough money for 2 business class tickets. So they gave me a business class ticket. That was the only compensation, was the ticket. Everything else was on my own. And they gave my son an economy class ticket. And I got on the plane, and there was, where I was sitting in business class, there was one other seat next to mine. And I waited and waited, and nobody took the seat. So I went over to the stewardess, and I said, my son's on this flight. He's in coach. Is it possible to bring him up to... Oh, no, absolutely not. Absolutely not. We can't do that. We can get fired if we do that. I said, okay. I said, I just asked because, I was with Star Trek, and she says, no. And then she walked away, came back with another one, with another stewardess, and said, tell her what you told me. And I said, I just said that, we're both on this mission to Burma, and I was with Star Trek. Oh, no. You want to see us fired? It was like I had been commanding them to do this. And I said, no, forget it. She says, okay. My hand to God. 5 minutes later, up comes a third person that they had pulled off the desk in the terminal to come up and talk to me. And I repeated the story, and they said, well, we never do this. Like, so angry at me. What did I do? Never do this. Except for this once. So they brought him up, and we both sat in business class. So that's my good story at the end of the day.
Thank you.
Okay. Thank you.
Mr. Cronkite?
Yes.
If you could go back to where you were starting to play Pavel Chekov in Star Trek, would you change anything you did?
Would I change anything about what?
Like the way you reacted to something or the way you said a line.
Oh, well, yeah, I'm sure there are plenty of times that happened. Oh, I should have done this. Oh, I should have done that. But that happens with any part that you read for. I once read for a part of, and I put a stutter in big, because I thought the fellow stuttered. He was a little off, off kilter. He was off kilter to begin with. And when I did it in the initial audition for the casting director, she said, oh, that's very good. Keep that, that's very good. So I came into the audition to audition for this part, and instead of could you, it was and it went on, and I couldn't even stop it. And then they said, thank you. And they all kind of looked at the casting director like, what was that? And I got out of there and said, I think I might have overdone it. So that happens all the time.
Thank you.